Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new video series focused on careers in the investor relations industry. For these videos, I'm delighted to be joined by executive search consultant Smooch Repovich Reynolds, someone who I'm sure many of you are familiar with and who has more than 2 decades of experience helping senior IR professionals find the right roles. Smooch, great to have you join us today.
Thanks for having me, Tim. It's always nice to be chatting about the IR profession and spending time with you.
Fantastic. So in this first video, we're going to discuss the very busy IR jobs market. And at IR Magazine, we keep track of the publicly announced moves within the profession. And I'd say we're seeing maybe at least 3 times as many announcements as normal. So Smooch, you're right in the middle of this. So first of all, how would you describe the current IR jobs market? Are we in a bit of a hiring frenzy at the moment?
Absolutely. The last couple of years have been a tremendous increase in the number of searches. And I think the important thing, Tim, is what are the drivers behind that? As we all know, the pandemic has thrown every management team and board upside down. And I think a large part of what happened was once companies got their employment forces stabilized, CEOs and boards stood back and said, okay, we're not going to be in this pandemic ditch forever. We don't know when there's going to be a pivot out of it, but do we have the right people in the right chairs to create a strategy that we can start working on and putting in place now so that when the pivot happens, we can move out of this ditch quickly? And that impacted IR from the standpoint of, I think there were a number of IR leaders who were doing good work quarter by quarter. But I think the expectations by management, the bar got raised. And as a result, the expectations were increased and companies decided to change out their IR leaders. And that has fueled a frenzy that is like nothing I've ever seen in the decades that I've been a search consultant.
Great, thank you so much, Smooch. And as you alluded to there, this frenzy that we're in at the moment is not going to last forever. So how can IR professionals be savvy about this current phase that we're in and try and make the most of it?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. I've said for a long, long time, candidate, know thyself. I think one of the most important factors for both IROs as well as hiring executives in a marketplace like this is to have your feet grounded. And the only way to do that is to understand within yourself, what are your strengths? Where do you want to go with your career? Who am I in essence? And I think also, unless you answer those questions for yourself, you're going to end up feeling as though you're a ping pong ball being batted all over the tabletop. And I think if you really love, for example, the entrepreneurship and of a small cap company, where you can really roll up your shirt sleeves, get your fingernails dirty, be that strategic thought leader as well as hands-on doer, there's no reason for you to go interview for a larger mega cap company because you're going to be like a fish out of water. And I think the biggest complaint I hear right now, or not even a complaint, but just a concern on the part of talent is I have 5 or 6 opportunities I'm considering all at once. I'm overwhelmed. I can't handle talking about even one more. And 5 or 6 simultaneously, I can guarantee you're going to make a mistake. So I think being a good, transparent executive, winnowing down those to maybe 2 or 3 is going to always be to your advantage.
Absolutely. No, I think that's great advice, Smooch. And I wanted to ask you about a sort of a related situation because, I've been speaking to IR professionals about the current jobs market. And, some people weren't actually looking for, a change of role. Maybe they were very happy where they were or where they are at the moment. But now they're being, maybe getting 2 or 3 recruiters calling them up on a daily basis. And so that's somebody who maybe sees an opportunity they weren't expecting, but at the same time is a bit worried because they don't want to make a mistake. It's not something they were necessarily planning to do. So do you have any advice for people who are in that kind of situation?
Well, I do, and I'm going to break that into kind of 2 or 3 topics, Tim, because I think it's worth talking about. One, there's a balance that you have as an IR professional between being responsive to executive recruiters and also taking care of your business, meaning you can't handle talking to 3 or 4 recruiters a day or even a week. So how do you cultivate and evolve those relationships, but also make sure that you don't fall down on the job, if you will, taking care of your own business and career that you have at hand. And I think part of that goes to being responsive, even leaving a midnight voicemail or sending an email after work hours saying to a search consultant, thanks for reaching out to me. I'm really happy where I'm at. Or whatever the reason might be, but always give an answer back. Um, I think also people forget that the really good recruiters are going to go after gainfully employed executives who are happy in their current roles. That I will tell you from the, nearly 30 years I've been doing this, we're always going after those who are happy doing what they're doing because I view my role as not being just bringing you another job. I view it as I'm bringing you, hopefully, your next best career step. And that's very different than shoving around peg in a square hole. So I think candidates need to realize that don't be so surprised if you aren't looking for a job. That makes you even more attractive oftentimes, not all the time, but oftentimes.
Great. Thank you so much, Smooch. And let me flip this on its head a little bit now. I mean, this is obviously a good time for IR professionals. There are a lot of opportunities out there, but at the same time, it's a challenging one for companies as they're looking to bring somebody in. I mean, the competition out there just makes it that much harder, I guess, to find the right IR professional that people are looking for. So in terms of the companies and sort of the hiring processes that they're going through, what are some of the challenges they're facing and how can they avoid sort of making mistakes in the current environment?
That's a great question, Tim, because it's not as though one side or the other has it harder or easier. They both wear different shoes that are difficult and challenging because of this frenzy. And so the talent markets are moving faster and harder. And hiring executives, mainly CFOs, but certainly CEOs, need to be much more nimble in terms of how they navigate the process. And I don't mean rush. I always communicate to my clients that if I think they're moving too fast or the markets are, I'm going to slow it down because quality trumps everything else. That said, I think that a CFO needs to think ahead if they're using a search consultant or an internal HR recruiter on mapping out the calendars. And I do that from the beginning with my clients because the calendar dance, as I call it, is one of the most challenging aspects of it. So I'm always looking 2 and 3 weeks ahead and planning that if round one interviews, for example, are just with the CFO, okay, who's round two and who's in the final round, and what are their calendars like? Once we've booked 2 or 3 candidates with a CFO, what is the next round of executives calendars like in the next couple of weeks? Are we heading into holidays? What is going on in kind of a macro manner? And I think if CFOs would think more like that and be more open to that, you can navigate a faster process, which means your candidates don't get swept up by other companies in the search process, and you can achieve some sort of balance, which I think, again, is important from a decision-making standpoint.
Great. Thank you so much, Smooch. I think that's great advice. And yeah, interesting to hear about the calendar dance and how that can, that's a good way to think about it, I think. And just
Well,
coming.
Tim, let me add just one more thing. I mean, this is the only function, if you will, other than maybe recruiting CFOs, where we have to work around the quarterly reporting process, which is another part of that calendar challenge. And so I think that again is something that is worth reminding CFOs that when you're in a partnership with a search consultant, you have to think about these things because candidates will go dark for 4 to 6 weeks when they enter a reporting season. And when you lose that kind of momentum in the decision-making process about talent, people forget. And so if you have 3 candidates, you want them lined up 1, 2, 3, so that the hiring executive has a fresh memory about what those discussions were like, what those people bring to the table, and it makes it easier for them actually to make decisions.
Great, thank you, Smooch. And yes, at iMagazine, trying to write and speak to IR professionals all the time, that's something we're always having to take into account as well. When people are going to disappear for a few weeks around those critical dates.
Yes.
But just coming to the end of the conversation now, I thought a good way to finish would be to have a takeaway that people can go away with and sort of help them as they think about their careers. And so, what would be one thing, one action, one takeaway you'd give to our audience, to help them sort of navigate better the current jobs market that we're all in?
I would say spend some time, invest some time being clear about who you are and what you want. Nobody's going to know that unless you know it very well yourself and you socialize it with others, whether it's trying to make advancements within your own company instead of going outside and changing jobs, or whether you're talking to a recruiter. You can't be all things to all people. And my prediction, Tim, is I think that there's going to be a fair percentage of mistakes that are made because of this frenzy. And I think we'll start to see kind of the bruising, if you will, of that and the fallout within 18 months to 2 years. And so my encouragement to IROs is start thinking about you and your agenda and what you want. Not to be narcissistic, but just to have a clear line of sight about what's important to you.
No, I think that's a great piece of advice to finish on. And with that in mind, Smooch, thank you so much for joining the conversation today and sharing your thoughts with our audience. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for including me, Tim. It's always a lot of fun and interesting to talk with you.
And if you in our audience have any topics you would like us to cover in a future video, then please do get in touch with us at the email address editorial@imagazine.com. And that's something that we can consider for a future video. But from both of us for now, thank you so much.